What's up, NPBF fans and coaches alike? We are back here for season number 8. Yes, you heard me correctly. We are on season 8 of the NPBF, and it is time to look at all of the drafts for this season. This season is getting a little bit wild because we decided to mix things up. We like to have a little bit of a theme going on every season, where we have like one little extra thing that, gets kind of keeps the coaches interested and, mixes things up a little bit. This season, we decided to include Ubers into the format, which I thought was a pretty interesting and fun thing to do. So let's go right ahead and hop into it, and let's see how it turned out. So, without further ado, let's get to our first coach, and that is going to be James and the Memphis Brave Birds. And he drafted Birminghamantes, Kartana, Celebi, Arcanine, Dragalge, Comfey, Slacking, Zapdos, Silvally, Swampert, Sneasel, and Landorus Incarnate. Alright, so a couple things I wanted to point out about his team. Obviously, you see he got an A-. The grades themselves were composited between myself and the fellow coach Dave from the Wellington Borderlands. Well, he also did all these amazing graphics, so he's absolutely a lord, so shout out to him for that. But a nice solid A- grade, and the reasons for that, his team's phenomenal. Like, you can see it's really, really well built. He's got plenty of defog support for the team. Really helps him out. He's got defog Cart, defog Comfey, defog Silvally, Zapdos as well. Lando can get defog. He's not going to struggle a lot with hazards, and if he does, that's his own issues. But he should not struggle with hazards very much at all. He has some really good clerics on his team as well. Good cleric support never hurts. I believe Celebi can run with therapy, or Heal Bell, while Comfey is the greatest cleric in the game, in my opinion, and he also has the Birminghamantes, which is one of the fattest clerics in the game. So that's pretty phenomenal. And he's got some really good hazard setters. While Lando can set his own rocks and stuff, we also have Dragalge, who can set up T-Spikes. Celebi can set up rocks as well. Swampert can be a rock setter. Gives him a lot of different options in that department as well, so that's pretty cool. Overall, core-wise, I think his cores are kind of middle of the road. His Fairy Dragon Steel consists of Cart, Dragalge, and Comfey, which is not a bad FDS core at all. It's not a great one, but it's not a bad one either. Definitely really solid. As far as his Firewater Grass core, Swampert, Arcanine, and either Celebi / Kartana. Really, really solid core. Really, really, really powerful. A lot of bulk involved in that core with a nice solid amount of offense to pepper in there. The Birminghamantes also goes into the FDS core, which gives it even more bulk, which is a very, very nice thing. Nice and mixes it up. As far as the team itself, though, he does have a couple. He does have a little bit of type overlap. Not too much that it's a huge issue with the double grass, the double fairy, double ground, double flying. A couple. It's a couple cases across the board, but this is one of the cases where I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. I think that definitely. I think that he'll be okay with it. Like, it's not going to be an overwhelming issue with that, you know what I mean? And his Z-move choices. Most cases throughout the course of the teams, they don't really come into play as much because I try to keep them out of play as much as I could, just because of the simple fact that not everyone at the time of me recording this, or at the time of when I started analyzing, had their Z users picked out and all that. So, just kind of left to go in most cases, but his user choices were Arcanine and Dragalge, and while those can be very, very great, I definitely think with monsters like Kartana and Slaking lying around as well, I think those could have been potentially better choices, as well as because Kartana does enjoy using his Z moves quite a lot. But regardless, I think he will do very, very well in the league. He's going to do very, very well this season, and I'm not really too worried about James in the long run. I think he will be fine. So a nice solid A- to start things off. Really, really good way to start off the drafts. Really, really solid draft as well. I'm looking forward to see what he does this season. Next up, we have our buddy Chris and his Phoenix Inferno. He is going to be picking up that Mega Tyranitar, Sneasel, Komodo, Salazzle, Sarina, Electros, Bastiodon, Suicune, Mimikyu, Ursaring, Simisage, and Lugia. The big Don himself, Lugia. Yes, he was able to acquire the Great Wall of Mons, which is pretty crazy, to be honest. It's pretty crazy. Really just solid Pokemon as a whole. It's really just solid Mon. In Lugia, it's one of those things that just kind of like forms a whole team, but in this case, I don't think it was formed well, and I'll explain why. So, for the upsides of this team, because you can see he got a nice solid B grade. I originally had him as a B-, but David bumped him up a little bit, which is totally understandable, and that's fine. I think he has a really good Firewater Grass core, if you ignore one aspect of it. Salazzle is an offensive component. Suicune is a really bulky component. And then Serena bringing the removal and bulk potential. We ignored the Simisage because it's not a Mon, it's an Unmon. It really wasn't needed. It was kind of just there. There was no real need to draft that Mon. I think there could have been something else he could have drafted in Tier 5 for sure. That would have been a billion times better than Simisage. But, to each their own, I suppose. He's got a lot of really solid power picks, like really powerful monster bonds. Mimikyu, Weavile, Electros is a powerhouse, Komodo is a powerhouse. Just some really powerful monster mons that he can really do a lot of damage with. And obviously, again, Lugia, the god of all bulk, to really put in some work against other teams. As far as the downsides I saw, his FDS core, while having Mimikyu and Komodo, is a great thing. Bastiodon brings it down a lot, because Bastiodon is a pretty crappy Pokemon. I'm not going to lie, I'll be completely honest. Bastiodon is shit. Bastiodon is purely and utterly shit. It is a bad Pokemon. It really doesn't provide a lot to any team that it's on. It's just kind of there. That brings down his core massively, because honestly, like, steel types in a lot of cases are very passive. They're there to take hits and do some work, but they're really not great. They're not fantastic. They're not meant to be either massive offensive threats or anything. They're meant to be bulkier mons. But Bastiodon is one of those cases that it just doesn't do much, even with its bulk. Like, it can sit there, but it's the things it can do while sitting there are minimal. And people know about the things it can do with, like, Metal Burst and stuff. People know about all these things. People can prep and prepare for things like that, and they're not worried about that. It's such a passive Pokemon, you can easily set up on it. It's not something that really anyone's going to be terrified of in prep, in my opinion. And the other things that bothered me is he has the best multi-scale user in the game. Why is his only real hazard removal Serena with Rapid Spin? that can be blocked by ghost types. And potentially beaten. Yes, I know Lugia gets defog, but Lugia also doesn't want to switch in on the rocks itself. And if any of his opponents are smart, they can get their rocks up when Lugia is not on the field. Pretty much spin block the hell out of Serena, and you're pretty much also getting a free 25% on Lugia and breaking that multi-scale upon entry almost every time. Also, mind you, he drafted a Sand Setter in Mega T-Tar alongside multi-scale user, which basically he's going to be if he brings both in the same week, which some cases he just might. He's breaking his own multi-scale. For what reason? And the main thing about this is he doesn't have anything that capitalizes much on the sand. Bastiodon gets its Spadef boosted by the sand, as well as Mega T-Tar, but that's it. He doesn't have a sand abuser, nothing with Sand Rush or anything like that to act as an offensive threat. He just drafted a Sand Setter that guaranteed always set sand. It's not like he grabbed regular T-Tar, who could have like a nerve or something so that you don't have to set up the sand if you want to bring it the same week as Lugia or whatever. He drafted the best multi-scaler while drafting a team that doesn't help the best multi-scaler, do multi-scale things. Which is very unfortunate, because it's a phenomenal Pokemon, and I hope that he does well with it. It's just a matter of if he's going to have to play really, really ridiculously well to do well with it, in my opinion. He's going to have to play pretty much out of his damn mind if he wants to do well. So, well, that being said, that's all I can really say for his team. He grabs a solid B rating. It's a good draft. It has all the potential to be an amazing draft. It's right on the cusp. It just needs a little bit something more. So, with that, we're going to move on to our next team, and that's going to be the Kamagui Comphase. And that is going to be coached by Johnny. He's a new coach here. And his team consists of Mega Alakazam, Tapu Bulu, Nihilego, Rotom Heat, Alolan Ninetales, Jellicent, Rhydon, Empoleon, Mandibuzz, Buzzwole, Tauros, and Zygarde complete form. So now you can run the Zygarde with the whatever his ability is. I can't remember it off the top of my head. The ability that makes him be father. Yeah. I gave it an A grade. Dave dropped it down a little bit, which is totally understandable. I could see where he would. Let's go over what I think about this one. Both his FDS and Firewater Grass cores are amazing. Really, really good cores. He has some overlap within them, which is kind of a meh, but I don't think it hurts him that much. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think it's too monumental. His overlap being in Alolan Ninetales and Tapu Bulu for Fairy, and Jellicent and Empoleon for Water. But he has Zygarde Complete as his Dragon, which Empoleon plus Zygarde Complete plus either of those fairies is a really, really strong core. Rotom Heat, Tapu Bulu, and either Empoleon or Jellicent for the Firewater Grass core, really, really solid. I think he probably could have grabbed a different ghost type if that was what he was going for instead of Jellicent, but I guess it's a matter of preference at that point. But I think that his team really benefits a lot from really benefits a lot from Bulu. He has some solid hazards and removal. Nihilego can set up the rocks. I believe also sets T-Spikes as well, which is really nice. Rhydon for rocks as well. So that's really solid. I believe Zygarde. No, Zygarde doesn't set rocks. But, good hazard setters. As far as removal goes, he's got Mandibuzz, which is one of the better defoggers in the game, as well as Rotom Heat for defog and Empoleon for defog as well. So 3 really solid defoggers right in a row. So really good stuff on there. Bulu supporting the team is really, really well. The grassy terrain pretty much makes it so that the earthquakes coming against him will not be doing all that much. And with things like Nihilego, who actually, if invested properly, even with its piss poor physical defense, can actually live in EQ from a lot of different things, which is really impressive. I don't think it lives a stab EQ, but if it's a non-stab one coming its way with the right investment, I think Nihilego actually tanks it pretty well. Not pretty well, but like enough that it can capitalize off of it, which is really impressive, to say the least. I actually never thought I would see the day where I would type in Nihilego calcing an earthquake and see it live. So that's pretty crazy. Also helps a lot with his Empoleon and Rhydon as well, pretty much neutering that weakness for them, which is really, really nice. Really supports them really solidly. Also can potentially help Rotom Heat if it's facing off against any Mold Breakers along the way that could potentially Earthquake him straight through all of his nonsense. Could be something very huge for him in the long run. And adding on top of that grassy terrain support, he also has the Aurora Veil support with the Alolan Ninetales, allowing for things like Zygarde to set up much easier, allowing for the majority of his monsters to sit on the field and fire off powerful hits like Buzzwole or Tapu Bulu, just smacking off really high-powered nuking maneuvers, just kind of like without too much fear of getting OHKO'd. Provides him a lot of power with his team, and with the Veil and stuff, he can bring things even like Mega Alakazam, which normally just kind of dies to just about anything. He can use that to pretty much just run through teams with the Veil up and not have to worry too much about getting OHKO'd by most things. Sorry, I'm just dealing with some shit. But yeah, for me it was a solid team, a nice solid just A team across the board. I think some of the overlap might hurt him in the long run, but I don't think it will be too huge of a deal. I think overall, I think it's a solid team and a really good way to start his season, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does, as he's new here, so it'll be kind of interesting. Now, time to go towards one of our more dominant coaches, who drafted, again, he drafted last season, in my opinion, poorly, and he still went undefeated for the majority, straight through the whole regular season, so obviously he knows what he's doing, but once again, another lackluster draft from Macaulay and his Carolina Persians. As you can see, he received a C+ grade for this draft with Mega Glalie, Hoopa Unbound, Stakataka, Chandelure, Araquanid, Ditto, Hitmonchan, Aromatisse, Zeraora, Diggersby, Tornadus Incarnate, and Xerneas. By the way, Geomancy is banned on Xerneas, so that's a thing. Just something to be aware of. That is indeed a thing. So Xerneas is kind of like its main thing is a little bit neutered. It's still an absolute monster. Don't get me wrong, but having one of its main having one of its main things taken away is really, really beneficial to anyone who's going to have to face him, for sure. They don't have to worry about prepping for that monster strat that honestly would just win games almost every time. As for the upsides to this team, I struggled to find too many. He's pretty good in the hazards area department. He can use Stacka for rocks. He has webs on Araquanid. He has potential spikes on Diggersby and Glalie. Removal-wise, it's not bad. He has one Defogger, one Spinner, with Hitmonchan, Spinning, and Torn for the priority defog, which is good, but not great, because with that situation, Hitmonchan, in my opinion, is not the best spinner, because it doesn't handle the ghost switching as well in some cases. Some bulkier ghost types pretty much just come in on it for free and don't have to think. You just don't have to think. It's a free switch. So its spinning capabilities are fairly limited, in my opinion at least. So kind of like, it puts a lot more pressure on Torn to act as that hazard remover more often than not, in my opinion. So it's not the best kind of removal. He didn't complete either his Firewater Grass or his Fairy Dragon Steel Cores, which, for me personally, I know some people don't think that they're that important. I think that having those solid type cores that cover each other so nicely is a very, very important part of. I think it's a very important part of the draft the draft format, in my opinion. I think it's I think that's something that people undervalue, and I don't think they should. He had the makings of a good Firewater Grass, starting with Chandelure and Araquanid. Any good bulky grass type would have made that core absolutely phenomenal. As well as his FDS, missing a dragon is huge. He's got Xerneas and Stakataka starting that core, but leaving out a dragon just kind of seemed weird to me. And grabbing Aromatisse as well. Aromatisse just kind of didn't feel like a necessary pick, in my opinion. It's a good mon, don't get me wrong, but it's just kind of there. And that's kind of like one of the main things I have to say about the team is it's just there. Like, he's got some powerhouses. You know, Stakataka's a monster if it can get going. Hoopa Unbound is an absolute beast. But and Zeraora is pretty cool, but his team just doesn't scream anything special to me. It just doesn't, like, it just looks middle of the road. It just looks, dead middle of the road team. Doesn't look like anything special. Doesn't look like the team of a monster. It looks like the team of someone who might just be starting in draft, which is not true in this case. I know that Mac's a good draft player. I don't know. Just for me, the team didn't really do much for me, so I just kind of nice C plus grade, just right in the middle. I don't think it's Like, I don't think he'll have any problem doing well. I think his team will be perfectly fine. I think it'll be a good team. And I think it'll work for him. That's the thing. Like, I think his team will do plenty of work. It's just, for me, on paper, it doesn't look good. So that's why he's sitting here with a C+ grade. The next team we are going to be talking about is Josh, who rebranded this season. I believe he was the Oxford Odysseys last season, into the Lavender Town Gangars. Really like that logo, by the way. Who drafted Mega Scizor, Landorus Therian, Raikou, Darmanitan, Hariyama, Miltank, Pyroar, Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, Druddigon, Ariados, and Yveltal. So, looking over this team, really good Firewater Grass core, first off. We're going to ignore the Pyroar, we're going to ignore the elephant in the room being Pyroar, because I honestly don't think he needed Pyroar. I think Pyroar is just kind of like a throwaway pick, and he definitely could have grabbed something better out of Tier 5, in my opinion, that fits his team better, because realistically, looking at his team, Firewater Grass-wise, Darmanitan, Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, that's an absolutely gorgeous Firewater Grass core. Absolutely gorgeous. Darm is a premier fire type, and one of the better fire types in the game, in my opinion, because it's just so powerful. And I honestly don't think Pyroar, if he's looking for a fire type to bring to a game, I think Darmanitan will win out the pros and cons fest between itself and Pyroar more often than not. But I just think Pyroar was kind of a throwaway pick. For me, at least. His FTS isn't bad at all. It's really, really solid between Finny standing out as a good fairy for his team. The Steel type bouncing between Scizor and Pharaoh. And then obviously having the Druddigon there. Druddigon doesn't really bring the core down too much in my opinion. I think it's still a really solid Mon. It's not an A+ Mon, but it's a solid B+, almost A- Mon. I think Druddigon has a lot of potential, and it's very unique as well. Really, really solid Mon, and especially with Sticky Web support with Ariados, is good hazard setting with Druddigon for rocks, Pharaoh for rocks and spikes, Lando for rocks, Miltank for rocks. He's got a really solid setup there with that. And let me just talk about how he supported the Mega Scizor and the Ferrothorn's 4x fire weakness so well. Not only does he have plenty of resistances between his two fire types, Finny being one of the bulkiest water types in the game, and Druddigon being a nice bulky dragon type, so covering that 4 different ways of resistances, but he also has double thick fat users in Hariyama and Miltank, so straight HP fires are not going to be taking down this Mega Scizor. They're not going to be taking out this Ferrothorn. It's not going to happen that way at all. But I think he really built this team well. I think he supported it well. I think it's really solid. So that's pretty cool. Literally, my only complaint with the team personally is Pyroar existing on it. and that's really it. Like, take Pyro away, swap him out for something else in Tier 5, and this becomes an A+ team almost immediately. So, really, really good job by Josh in drafting this team. I think it's really, really solid. Sorry, I just kind of like that for a minute there. But, yeah, good team. We're going to move on to our next crew, which is Dave and the Wellington Whirlwinds. I was the one who gave the solo grade for this team, and it got a solid A+ rating because it should. It's a really, really powerful team. He's got the Mega Swampert, he's got the Scizor, Klefki, Florges, Delmise, Delphox, that's a mouthful, Beartic, Thundurus Therian, Zygarde Dog, Umbreon, Wigglytuff, and Kyogre as his Uber. So, looking over the team, right off the bat, you see the Rain Core. Really strong Rain Core with Kyogre, Mega Swampert, Beartic with Swift Swim capabilities as well. Really, really dangerous core as well. Really, really strong. His hazard removal is amazing. Defog on Klefki, Florges, Thundy, while also having spin capabilities with Delmise. Really, really phenomenally built. Good Firewater Grass between Kyogre / Swampert, Delmise, and Delphox. Even having a good fire that isn't supremely hurt by the rain, which is really good. Solid hazard setting potential with Klefki having spikes. Mega Swampert can set its own rocks. Wigglytuff can set rocks. Really good stuff going on there. My one joke complaint was 7.8 out of 10. It's a 7.8 out of 10 team because too much fairy. He has 3 fairy types, but it doesn't really hurt him because Florges' bulk balances out with Wigglytuff's bulk. Wigglytuff's not going to come all that often, in my opinion. And Klefki also doesn't really deal with the same weaknesses that Florges does due to its steel fairy typing, which is good. The Rain's also really good because it supports it strongly supports his Scizor and his Klefki as well as Delmise by weakening any fire type moves that come his way. It's just a really solid and hard to break team. I can't say enough good about this team. It's absolutely terrifying. It's one of the hardest teams, I think, in my mind to prep for. It's absolutely scary beyond all belief, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with it. It's going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with, to say the least. Moving on to the next team, which is my team. I'm going to have to try and be unbiased because this grade is actually given by Dave. I did not give myself a grade. He gave me an A+, which thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. My team consists of Mega Latios, Clefable, Entei, Alomomola, Mienshao, Zebstrika, Cryogonal, Protean Greninja, Amoonguss, Kamala, Golurk, and Genesect, with Z users being Golurk and Protean Gren. So, just to go over it real quickly, Firewater Grass Core, Entei, Amoonguss, Alomomola / Gren, gives me the regen core there. Actually becomes triple regen when you include Mienshao, which is really, really cool. Fairy Dragon Steel, we have Genesect, Clefable, and Megaladios, which is absolutely monstrous and terrifyingly really, really strong stuff. Really, really strong, in my opinion. I think it's a really, really powerful team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it pans out for me in the long run. I think it's really, really going to be a fun team to use. Strong core, good fast electric, nice solid regen core. Removal wise, I got spin / defog on Cryo, defog on Latios, spin on Komala. You know, enough to keep it so that not one mon has to do that work on its own, which is really nice. Hazard setter wise, I have access to spikes and toxic spikes with Gren. I have access to stealth rocks with Golurk, which is really all I need. I've never been too big of a hazard spammer, in my opinion. I've always kind of avoided it. But, yeah. Overall, I think the team is really solid, and I hope it works out well for me this season. The next team we're going to go over is the Denver Nuzzle, coached by Josh. He was our Winnipeg Aquajets last season. He rebranded this season, and he came out with an absolute banger of a squad, A+ straight out the gate. We had no disagreements on that one. Let's just go over the team as a whole and see what we got going on. So we got the Zardex, we got the Magearna, we got the Gliscor, we have the Galvantula, we have the Tentacruel, we have the Zoroark, we have the Perugly, we have the Chestnut, we have the Mew, we have the Seismitoad, we have the Crabominable, and we have the Giratina Origin form. So, looking over the team, first of all, let's talk cores. All right, FDS. So, right off the bat, you see he has a Magearna, which covers 2/3 of that FDS, and coming up with the third is either Giratina or Megazard X, which is absolutely phenomenal. Both mons are crazy strong. Literally, I think my only nitpick ended up being with this team is that I personally prefer the other Giratina better, just because this one has to always hold the Grisius Orb, and takes the boosted knockoff damage all the time, because you can't knock the Grisius Orb off of it. So it will always take the boosted knockoff damage, which is a huge deal when it comes to how often things are going to be running knockoff and stuff like that in this league. So really, really interesting to see how he plays around that. But his Firewater Grass Core is also phenomenal. Chestnut, great bulk. Zard, amazing fire type. And with either Seismitoad or Tentacruel, you have the hazard setter options, or you have the hazard removing options. Really, really good stuff. Very bulky team for the most part. A lot of his mons are very bulky, with things like Gliscor and stuff running around as well. He has sticky webs, which support Magearna extremely well. He's got a bunch of good rockers in Gliscor, Mew, Seismitoad. Mew, being that jack of all trades, is going to be really, really useful for him, I think. Even like the Memeish Mon, like Crabominable, like fits well on this team, gives him nice, good, solid stab ice and fighting typing, which is really, really good. Zoroark's a nice pick as well. He's got good removal options with Spin on Cruel, Defog, Gliscor, and Mew, and stuff like that. It's just a really good team. It's a really, really good team. I can't find fault with this team at all. I really can't. So, shout out to Josh for nailing it for the season for sure. Really, really great team. Really, just good. Just really good. Next up, we have my buddy Logan and the Birminghamantes coming through with the Mega Lopunny, Jirachi, Togekiss, Cloyster, Tyrantrum, Torkoal, Leafeon, Xurkitree, Nidoking, Sableye, Leavanny, and Naganadel. So very, very interesting team for sure. So let's go over. First of all, he's got a double hack. He's got a Hax Core with Jirachi and Togekiss. So that's disgusting, and I already hate him for it. He has Sun plus Webs, which is very interesting, with Torkoal setting up the Sun for Chlorophyll Mons like Leavanny and Leafeon to put in some work. Also allowing for Mons, his Mon with Webs being Leavanny, to set up Webs and really, really punish the opposing team. So he has Mons that can outspeed through the Sun and can set it up so that the rest of his team outspeeds outside of Sun as well. Really, really good stuff with that. Both of his cores are solid. They're not phenomenal, but they're not terrible either. Fire, Water, Grass-wise, he's got the Torkoal with either Leavanny and Leafeon going along with Cloyster. Only issue I have with that one is it's fairly weak on the Spadef side, so a strong enough special attacker can pretty much rip through his Fire, Water, Grass core without any issues. As far as Fairy Dragon Steel, it's got the Hax core plus Tyrantrum / Naganadel, which is absolutely terrifying. Really, really strong core. Naganadel is an absolute beast and a half, so I'm really, really loving that. My only real issue with the team, and it's a minor nitpick because it can be handled, but for the most part, I see his team has a bit of a ground weakness amongst a majority of his members. Like he's got Leavanny, which resists it, but isn't that bulky. And he's got Leafeon, which resists it, which is probably one of his bulkier things to handle. And he's got bulky Cloyster to handle the ground moves. But besides that, Sableye is not too bulky, so he's not going to appreciate it. Tyrantrum, weak to it. Togekiss is an immunity, but, that's one immunity out of his whole team. Jirachi's weak to it. Xurkitree's weak to it. Tyrantrum's weak to it. Torkoal's weak to it. Naganadel's weak to it. Half of his team is weak to ground. So I definitely think that can come through and hurt him a lot if he's not careful. If someone can capitalize on that ground weakness, it's going to be a huge issue for his team in the long run. It's definitely going to be scary for him to deal with. So hopefully it's not that big of an issue for him. Hopefully he's able to prep around that and maybe even switch his team up at some point to handle that. But regardless, his team is very, very threatening. So it definitely deserves its A grade. Next team we're going to discuss is our two-time champion, back-to-back, Rennie and the New York Dialgas, who drafted very interestingly. He used up all of his points early and asked if it would be okay if he went through the season with one less Mon, so we kind of allowed it because he's a monster. And it still turned out an A-grade draft. Let's go over it real quick. We got Mega Pinsir, Heatran, Rotom Wash, Espeon, Shaman, Talonflame, Luxray, Mamoswine, Metagross, Primarina, and the Rayquaza. So first of all, I want to point out that Rennie likes to draft a lot of the same things. He's drafted Mamo a bunch. He has drafted Metagross. He's drafted Espeon a bunch. He's drafted Talonflame a bunch. These Mons appear to be pretty much staples for Rennie, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's been working for him, so that's fine. So looking at his team, you see a lot of type overlap, and normally that's a huge issue. But he definitely does a good job with it. So first of all, let's talk about Talonflame and Heatran, their overlap, right? Only real thing that overlaps here is the water weakness that they both share, because Heatran is neutral with rock types. because it's steel typing. And Talonflame is immune to the ground typing, which is really, really good. And he has plenty of support for that water weakness in Rotom Wash, Primarina, and Shaman. So that's covered. Double steel type between Metagross and Heatran. He's got plenty to cover the ground weakness in Talonflame, Shaman, Rotom Wash, and Rayquaza, as well as Mega Pinsir as well. So he's got a lot of things to cover that ground weakness there. Right? Double Psychic, Metagross, Espeon. Actually really doesn't have anything that stops that. He stops the dark typing with Primarina, but it doesn't really stop Ghost type. Strong Ghost type could cause him some problems. We'll see how that goes later in the season. We got Rotom and Primarina. Both weak to grass, but he's got crazy support for grass weaknesses with Metagross, Heatran, Talonflame, Shaman, stuff like that. Mamoswine also doesn't appreciate the grass typing, but he's got a lot of things to handle it with, like Rayquaza and Mega Pinsir as well. Yeah, he's just got it's team that on paper isn't great, but when you start picking it apart and looking deeply into the team as a whole, it's really, really good. Like, it works really, really well. And, like, hazard setting wise, he's got Heatran, he's got Metagross, he's got Mamo to throw rocks up, which is all really good. Removal wise, I think Talonflame gets defog, which is still not great if he doesn't get it in at the right times. His removal isn't the best, because I think Talonflame gets defog. I don't know if Rayquaza gets defog, but I know like Rotom is more or less his like main hazard remover, which isn't bad. Rotom's one of the better hazard removers in the game, but it's also not great. Espeon kind of deters hazards a little bit with its magic bounce, but it's not like it can be played around, so definitely something you'll have to watch out for. But overall, I think it's a really fantastic team and has a lot of potential to do really well. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes all the way to playoffs without too much of a struggle again, because that's just what Rennie does. So yeah, moving on to the next team, we have Gavino and the Jerusalem Jirachis, which is the first time I've seen these logos, which is really cool. His team consists of Megalodios, Volcanion, Chansey, he'd bring in the Chansey back, Alolan Muck, Hoopa, Confined Form, Rhyperior, Vivillon, Skarmory, Bisharp, Electivire, Rotom Frost, and Deoxys Attack Form. So, first things first, power-wise, he is absolutely monstrous. Like, he has Bisharp, which can run through most teams with Priority Sucker Punch and stuff like that. He's got the Deoxys Attack, which is absolutely disgustingly strong. Like, you almost have to sack something with Deoxys Attack, like, 99% of the time. You just have to sack something. And you just kind of have to accept that fact. That you're not going to go into a matchup against Deoxys Attack and not lose them on. Plain and simple. Volcanion's a beast. Megalodios is a setup monster. A lot of really strong mons. His removal is also really good. He has Skarm to defog. He has Volcanion to defog. Latios to defog. Rotom Frost to defog. I think Vivillon even to defog, potentially, if he had to. But for me, that's kind of where like the great portions stop and the meh portions start. He's in the case of the type cores not being filled out, which kind of sucks. He did it last season too, I think. No grass type for his team. His fire, water, grass core consists of Volcanion, and that's it. Which is kind of a bummer. FDS wise, he's got that boy Megalotti, and he's got the double steal with Bisharp, Skarmory with an offensive and defensive steal, but he doesn't fill it out with a good fairy type, which I think personally a fairy type is one of the biggest and most important things you should have on a draft team. Nowadays, that's just my opinion, my thoughts on it. Honestly, I just feel like looking at the team as a whole, it doesn't feel like it synergizes well together. It doesn't feel like it meshes. It doesn't. It feels like there's something missing from the team. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It just doesn't, like, looking at the team on paper, it just does not feel like it works well together. Everything just kind of feels jumbled and just kind of like he just dartboard through to pick some of his mons and left it at that. Do I think he's still going to do well? Yeah, Cavino's a really solid coach. He's a really good battler, so I'm sure he's going to do fine. But draft on paper is looking like a solid B. So that's where we're going to leave it at. We're going to move on to our next coach, being Danny and the Chicago Bewares, who sniped me in the draft for my Uber, which I don't blame him because it's a great Uber, but still, fuck. His team consists of Mega Abomasnow, Celesteela, Tangrowth, Heliolisk, Donphan, Moltres, Gramble, Zygarde 50%, Starmie, Magmortar, and a Skuntank. So, looking over the team, not too bad. His cores are really good. His Fire, Water, Grass core consists of Tangrowth, Moltres, and Starmie, with flex positions being made for Mega Obama and Magmortar, which Magmortar's not doesn't hurt the overlap as a whole in my opinion. Mega Obama is just kind of meh to me, but I think it could also do really well. He's got the FDS of Gramble, Celesteela, and Zygarde, which is super strong. I also love how he was able to draft Zygarde, which is one of the bigger threats to Celesteela. So you got at least one of the 3,000 arrows spammers off the board to avoid having to deal with that in the future, which is really good for him. Well, that's smart. I think it's a really, really good FDS core. His hazard removal options, with Donphan as a good spinner, Skuntank as a defog, Starmie as a spinner as well, and even Moltres as defog if he has to, could work really, really well for him. The reason why it's an A and not an A+, by the way, he also has Marshadow, just sitting there, just chilling, fucking monsters. I really wanted Marshadow in this league, didn't get it, unfortunate, but only reason it's an A and not an A+, in my opinion, is that it's very light on hazard setters. When I say it's light on hazard setters, I mean it has a hazard setter, and that's Donphan. Donphan is the only thing he has on his team that can set up rocks, and that's it. That's all he has. So that's kind of a big deal, because hazards are a very important part of competitive, in my opinion. And to have a very minimal amount of that on your team kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's also not terrible. And he also didn't draft anything to benefit from the hail. So, I think if he had, say, swapped out Magmortar for Beartick if it hadn't gone yet, or maybe a Lowland Sandslash, something like that. Something that benefited from the hail, get a Slush Rush Abuser at some point in the draft. I think it would have been a little bit better, and definitely could have maybe even come closer to bumping into A+ range, but neither here nor there. It's just at that point, it's just a minor nitpick. He has the hail and just didn't do anything with it. But regardless, it's still an A-grade team, and it's still going to be a massive threat to deal with, so kudos to him for drafting such a strong squad. Next up, we have Vishnu, a new coach who took over last season, and his Indian Infernapes, drafting an absolute A-plus team here. Really, really solid draft. He has the Mega Diancie, he has the Tornadus Therian, Scolipede, Incineroar. He's got the Hitmontop, the Lurantis, he's got the Palossand, he's got the Kyurem Black, he's got the Reuniclus, he's got the Licky Licky, he's got the Lantern, and he has the Dialga. So, going over his team, his Firewater Grass core is lower tier, starts at tier 3 and goes down, and still is a very powerful core, with Incineroar being bulky with its Intimidate and whatnot, really strong. Lurantis providing monstrous contrary offensive support while also being a defogger and being a decent bulky grass. And Lantern functioning very nicely as a good water immunity / electric immunity for the team, and being a nice good bulky water down in the lower tiers. Really strong right off the bat. His FDS core is gross. Mega Diancie, Dialga, and Kyurem Black. That's gross. Really, really gross. So stop it. But really, really gross. Really, really hard to deal with, for sure. Hazards, really solid. Dialga, I believe, sets rocks as well. I don't play Ubers much, so I don't know. Pretty sure it does, though. Palossand for rocks as well. Spikes / T-Spikes with Scoley. Potential rocks on Diancie as well. So good options there. Removal-wise, he's got Defog Lurantis. He's got the Spin on Hitmontop. He's got Defog Torn-T as well as having Magic Bounce on the Mega Diancie to potentially deter opponents from bringing hazards themselves. He has a good regen core as well, with Torn-T and Reuniclus. Something that some people might not notice right off the bat is really, really strong. And very, very dangerous, in my opinion. Honestly, it's just a solid draft across the board. Everything fits a role nicely. Licky Licky's a good cleric as well. I don't remember if we have Speed Pass. I can't remember. I'm not going to look up the rules now. But if we do, then with Scolipede, it's even more terrifying of a draft. So it's definitely going to be a big thing to deal with, and definitely going to be very scary to deal with. So look out for Vishnu to be a very huge threat this season, for sure. He put in a crazy season last season, coming in, taking over a team that wasn't all that great, and carrying it straight through to the finals, which was absolutely wild. So shout out to him for putting in all the work last season. Really good stuff. So, yeah, great team. Now, from a great team, though, we have to go to a not-so-great team. We're going to pull up Noriel and the Afghan Psyducks. They pulled out a D+. First of all, a main reason, he lost a grade from me because he didn't even draft half of his team. Rennie pretty much drafted his team for him. And it's just, Rennie's great, and I love him. He's great. Love Rennie. He's cool. But he did not help out Noriel in this situation at all. His team consists of Mega Medi, Garchomp, Melodic, Venomoth, Magneton, Manectric, Murkrow, Victini, Dugtrio, with Arena Trap available, mind you, Rotom Fan, Steelix, and Aegislash. So, let's talk about the little bit of positives, because there's a little bit. I think Venomoth gets Toxic Spike, so that's pretty cool. Hazard setting, he's got Garchomp for rocks. He's got Dugtrio for rocks. He's got Steelix for rocks. He's got a good setup there for hazard setting. Removal-wise, he's got Priority Defog with Murkrow, as well as having defog on Rotom, which is really good, I guess. But that's kind of where, for me, it just kind of dies. Core-wise, he doesn't have it. They're not there. They don't exist. He's got a Dragon and Steel, but no Fairy. He's got Garchomp with 3 Steel types in Magneton, Steelix, and Aegislash. Say hello to Earth Power for me, boys. He's got a Fire and a Water, but no Grass type. I don't know why people hate Grass types. No one ever wants to draft their Grass types. But only Milotic and Victini are here on that end. Weakness-wise, he's got a ridiculous ground weakness with only 2 Mons that can kind of like come in on that and handle it. But Aegislash, Steelix, Manectric, Magneton, Victini, all weak to ground, while having only 2 things on his entire team that can switch in on ground-type moves safely. Like, a strong, like, Bandit Earthquake pretty much fist-fucks his team. Like, a strong Life Orb Edgequaker runs this team's fate immediately. It doesn't do anything type overlap wise. Normally, I try to avoid it being considered an issue, but this is a bad case of it. He's got double Psychic between Teeny and Medicham. He's got triple Electric with Rotom, Magneton, Manectric. He's got triple Steel. He's got triple Ground, double Flying. It's just a mess. The team itself is a mess. It doesn't gel well. It's going to be an absolute mess. It's super easy to prep for. It doesn't really do a lot of crazy things. It's just kind of blah. The only thing that could potentially carry this team is Aegislash. Aegislash is 50-50s. If he gets them right, he could very well pick up some key wins just on Aegislash's back alone. But I don't think that'll be enough to carry him for the season. Honestly, don't think it's going to help him too much. And it's just a rough team to look at. It's going to be a tough... I don't mean to be harsh, but it's rough. It's really rough. So, best of luck to him. I hope it works out in his favor. But I don't see it working out in his favor well. So, yeah. Moving on to the next team, we have new coach Darian and the Anaheim Ducklets. Cute logo, by the way. I really like it. His team is phenomenal. He has the Mega Altaria, the Infernape, Staraptor, Jolteon, Drapion, Gligar, Klinklang, Manaphy, Decidueye, Ribombee, Golisopod, and the Necrozma Dusk main form. So, just great across the board. I really had no complaints when I was looking over this team. Fairy Dragon Steel comes down to he has the Mega Altaria and he has Dusk main Necrozma. Do you need anything else? No. Well, you also have Klinklang as a potential other Steel, but did you need anything else? I don't think you did. Thank you. Fire and Water Grass, he has Decidueye, Manaphy, and Infernape. Phenomenal, with Golisopod as a flex for the water type role. Really, really amazing core. Really solid stuff. It's power. It's really, honestly powerful. He also has Ribombee to flex for the fairy role. I always forget Ribombee's a fairy type. Good hazard setting. Gligar is a great rock setter. You have spikes for Golisopod. You have webs for Ribombee. You have T-spikes for Drapion. He's got the full set right there. He also has Infernape for rocks, which is really, really cool. I think Necrozma also gets rocks too, so it's an awesome option as well because it's going to scare a lot of things out. Removal-wise, he's got Defog Gligar. He's got, I think Ribombee gets Defog, but he's got Defog on Decidueye as well. Defog with Staraptor. And I believe defog on Altaria now, finally. I think Altaria should have had defog ages ago, but whatever, it has it now. Very good. Very, very strong Mon. Very strong stuff. I can't find fault with this team. I really can't. It's just really good. My only thing, maybe, is that it does have a bit of a fire weakness. That's my only, nitpick, is, Rabumbi, Decidueye, Klinklang, the Karasma, builds a little bit of a fire weakness, and one of his water types, being Golisopod, doesn't really want to take too many fire moves either. He does have things like Altaria and Manaphy to switch into them, but, in certain matchups it could be a little difficult for him to get around certain fire types. So, just a word of caution, keep an eye on that. But besides that, I think he should be fine. It's a really, really good team. So, looking for him to put in a lot of work this season, I'm sure. So, with that, we're going to get into our last squad, being Dave and the Atlanta Dragonites. Drafting a really strong team here with the Mega Beedrill, Tapu Koko, Sylveon, Crocodile, the Mantine, the Typhlosion, the Furfrou, which I picked for him. Really good pick, in my opinion. Superior, Gengar, Registeel, Hawlucha, and Kyurem White. So let's run through his FDS core is super strong. He's got Tapu Koko, Registeel, and Kyurem White, which is really, really powerful. Really, really, really good core, in my opinion. Really covers all of its weaknesses. He has Sylveon for the flex role in the fairy spot, but Tapu Koko is just better, in my opinion. He also has Koko Lucha access through this, which is really good. Really, really still strong. It's still a strong combination. No one can fight that. Hawlucha is still a powerful, monstrous threat with a Tapu, so definitely can't discredit that in any way, shape, or form. It's still really strong. So, shout out to him for that. So Koko Lucha is still there. His Firewater Grass isn't bad either. Mantine, Typhlosion, and Superior. Really good combination there. Just solid. Hazard setting wise, he's got Crook. He can set up Toxic Spikes with Mega Beedrill if he wanted to, but he has Crook for rocks. He's got Registeel for rocks, which is not bad at all. He's really good. It's solid enough. His removal is also not too bad either. He's got Defog on Mega B. He's got Defog on Koko. He's got Defog on Mantine. I think Defog on Superior now too. Everything gets Defog in this fucking generation. My only thing with his team is it's fairly frail for the most part across the board. Bar Registeel and Mantine and Sylveon are good special defensively, but physically defensively they're not great. Bar those few instances, and Furfrou I guess is very bulky, but for the most part his team's fairly frail, and I feel like he's going to be bringing a lot more offensive builds because of how his team is built, how his team is designed. So I see the frailty of his team could be a very issue, because if you face off against something that hits just too hard, even resistances don't matter. So hopefully that's not a huge issue for him, and that he doesn't have to worry about that too much, because it's a really solid squad, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with it. So solid A grade right there. And that's going to end off our draft. So for the most part, very, very solid drafts across the board. Majority of them were A's in some way, shape, or form. But really good drafts across the board. And that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I know, yeah, they probably was a little shaky in spot. I haven't recorded in ages, and I probably won't be recording again for a while, so hope you guys enjoyed this. Shout out to you NPBF coaches. Hope you guys enjoyed my analyses as well. With that being said, we're going to get out of here. Until next time, I'm PokePrimer, and I'm signing off. Peace.